$250,000 home. 20 years. If you rented that house, you paid the landlord close to $500,000, and you're walking away with nothing. If you owned it, 5 separate engines of wealth were running on the same asset the whole time, and most owners can't name 3 of them. Today, we name all 5. This is Built to Own.
Welcome to the RE Real Estate Podcast, where we discuss buying and selling real estate in black and white. Here are your hosts, Ben Harang and Clint Galliano.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the RE Real Estate Podcast. My name is Ben Harang, and with me today, as usual, is my co-host, Clint Galliano. How you doing today, Clint?
I'm doing wonderful, Ben. How you doing?
Clint, I'm doing terrific. We might get through the day without the rain coming down and beating on these metal buildings we're in. But if you hear anything, you'll know why. Because it's supposed to rain while we doing this. So I guess time will tell. All right. So what we're talking about today, Clint?
We're continuing with our Built to Own, and we opened up Act 2 last week with questions on how to get in. And last episode was the whole of Act 2. Today, we're moving into Act 3, and it opens the questions of what happens next, how ownership actually pays off over time. It's not your house appreciates. That's just one engine of 5. Today, the 5 engines of property wealth: cash flow, loan paydown, appreciation, tax benefits, and leverage. Every one of them runs on the same asset the day you close, and they run simultaneously across the full holding period. For structure, we're going to frame why ownership compounds and renting doesn't. Then walk through each engine individually and show what all 5 look like in motion on a concrete 20-year story. It's not investment advice. It's not tax advice. Real estate is one path to wealth, not the only path. Every action item routes you to a CPA or a financial planner for your specific situation. And to reiterate that, it's disclaimer time. Before we go further, nothing in this episode is tax, legal, or financial advice. Every number we walk through is illustrative. Tax rules change. Individual situations vary. Real estate is one investment vehicle. It's not the right vehicle for every listener at every stage of life. Before you act on anything you hear today, consult a CPA for tax-specific questions and a financial planner for personalized investment strategy. Both are third parties to this show. All right, Ben, take it away.
Why ownership compounds? The core insight is that ownership isn't a savings account. It's a compound interest machine with multiple engines running at once. Every month of ownership does 5 different things simultaneously, not sequentially.
So compared to renting, a renter's monthly payment does exactly one thing. It pays for shelter. When the month ends, that money is gone. There's no engine still running the next morning.
Compared to a savings account, saving $500 a month at 4% interest for 20 years yields about $183,000. That's one engine running on that money. Ownership runs 5 engines on the same asset for the same period.
The magic is in the simultaneity. The engines aren't sequential. You don't get appreciation first, then cash flow, then tax benefits. They all run at the same time on the same asset from the day you close.
And this is why the wealth gap between owners and renters widen over time. Same income, same city, same job market. Wildly different net worth outcomes over 20 years. The gap isn't about income, it's about compounding.
So here's some stuff that renters miss. There's nothing wrong with renting. Flexibility matters, and there are life stages where renting is the right call. Short term jobs, life transitions, first year in a new city. But renting is not building wealth, it's paying for shelter month by month, indefinitely.
The average American renter over 20 years pays somewhere between $360,000 and $600,000 to the landlord, depending on the market. That's someone else's compounded wealth.
The renter's common self explanation is, I'm investing the difference in the stock market. That almost never happens in practice at the scale that would close that gap. And even when it does, the leverage of the real estate typically outperforms unlevered stock investing for working families over long holding periods.
And the five engines only exist for owners. Every one of them requires ownership as a precondition. That's the setup for the rest of today's episode. Let's walk through them one by one.
5 engines. First engine is cash flow. For an owner occupant, cash flow is the rent you're not paying to someone else. Every month you own instead of renting is money that stays in your pocket. It's not necessarily a check that comes in, or at least in the most basic common situation, but it could be. But it's a check that doesn't go out. Gives you the same result, it's just a different framing.
For an investor with a rental property, cash flow is the actual net income after mortgage, insurance, taxes, and maintenance. Typical target in this market, $200 to $500 per month. Modest per property, powerful when it compounds across multiple properties over time.
Cash flow is the only engine that shows up as monthly dollars. The other 4 engines build wealth silently without a monthly check, which is why they're easier to overlook and harder to explain. There's the reason why so many people underestimate ownership.
The second engine is the loan paydown. Every mortgage payment has 2 components, interest and principal. The principal portion is loan paydown. It's not an expense, it's a transfer. You're moving money from your checking account into the equity of your home.
On a 30-year mortgage, principal is small in year 1, maybe $200 a month out of a $1,500 payment. By year 15, roughly half the payment is principal. By year 25, most of the payment is principal. Loan paydown accelerates over the holding period.
It does. The loan paydown is often described as forced savings. A working family that never manages to voluntarily save $500 a month can nevertheless end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity through mortgage amortization alone. That's the engine doing the work.
Engine number 3, appreciation. Property appreciation is the increase in market value over time. Long-term U.S. average is home values appreciate roughly 3 to 4% per year. Louisiana specifically tracks slightly below the national average, but the long-term trend is positive.
And compounding matters. A $250,000 home appreciating at 3.5% per year across 20 years grows to roughly $497,000. That's $247,000 of wealth from appreciation alone without any effort from the owner beyond making the mortgage payment and keeping the house up.
Now, there's 2 caveats to that. Appreciation is not guaranteed and it's not linear. Some years are flat, some years are down, some years are way up. It varies by market, by neighborhood, and by property type. What's realistic in Houma is different from what's realistic in Austin. Talk to a real estate professional about your specific market.
All right. The fourth engine is the tax benefits. For owner occupants, the mortgage interest rate deduction, subject to standard deduction thresholds, the property tax deduction, And the capital gains exclusions when you sell, $250,000 for singles, $500,000 for married couples on a primary residence.
For real estate investors, more powerful benefits: depreciation of the rental property, deduction of the operating expenses. If you're using a 1031 exchange to defer capital gains, cost segregation for accelerated depreciation. This is where a good CPA becomes essential. The code is complicated and the difference in outcomes is real.
The tax code, for policy reasons going back decades, deliberately favors real estate over most other investments. Working families who tap into these benefits keep meaningfully more of what they earn. For your specific situation, talk to a CPA.
Indeed. Engine 5, leverage. Leverage is the ability to control a large asset with a small down payment. Put $10,000 down on a $200,000 home, and you can control the full $200,000 asset. When that asset appreciates 5%, that's $10,000 of gain on your $10,000 investment, 100% return on the cash you put into it.
No other everyday investment offers leverage this powerful. Stocks generally require full cash purchase or expensive margin loans. Small businesses require significant startup capital. Real estate is uniquely leverage friendly for the working family. And the loan programs from episode 6 are what make that leverage accessible.
So here's a real trade-off. Leverage amplifies losses too. If the property drops 10%, you've technically lost 100% of your down payment on paper. This is why holding period matters. Real estate leverage works best for people who can hold through cycles, which for most owner-occupants happens naturally because you live there.
Here's a 20-year story. We have a hypothetical $250,000 starter home in Houma, purchased in 2005, owner-occupied, 30-year FHA mortgage, 3.5% down. That's $8,750 down at the closing, 6% interest rate, typical for the time, standard homeowners insurance, standard property tax.
The owners live in it. They don't rent it out. They don't do a strategic refinance. Just a regular family living a regular life in their home for 20 years, making the mortgage payment every month.
Then they sell in 2025, which is when we run the numbers. Let's look at all 5 engines produced across these 2 decades on this specific asset.
All right, we're going to go over the 5 engines in motion. Engine 1, cash flow. Renting the same house across 20 years would have cost the family somewhere around $432,000, using an $1,800 a month starting rent per month, with typical rent inflation. Owning avoided most of that outflow. Net effect, hundreds of thousands of dollars stayed in the family's pocket instead of the landlord's.
Engine number 2 is the loan paydown. After 20 years of a 30-year mortgage at that starting balance and rate, roughly $95,000 to $110,000 of principal has been paid down. That's now equity in the home, essentially converting from monthly cash flow into net worth without the owner ever consciously saving anything.
Engine 3, appreciation. $250,000 home at 3.5% annual appreciation across 20 years equals roughly $497,000. That's $247,000 of appreciation, essentially wealth the asset produced in its life while the family was busy living life.
Engine number 4 is the tax benefits. Mortgage interest deductions across 20 years are itemized, plus property tax deductions, plus the capital gains exclusion when they sell. Realistically, $30,000 to $60,000 of taxes saved across the full period. Not the biggest engine, but real money.
And engine 5, leverage. The initial $8,750 down payment controlled an asset that ultimately grew to $497,000 in value, with $110,000 of equity from the paydown. The return on that original cash investment is enormous, hundreds of times over. That's what leverage does across a long period.
So I added up conservatively. Rent avoided plus appreciation plus forced savings from loan down payment plus the tax benefits, all leveraged from an $8,750 down payment. The family's net worth from that single asset is roughly $400,000 to $600,000 after 20 years. 5 engines running simultaneously produced that result.
A renter family with the same income across 20 years, even one who diligently invested the difference, quote unquote, rarely comes close to that outcome. The compounding just does not happen the same way outside of ownership of a property. The engines aren't available to you.
And that's the point of today's episode. Ownership isn't just shelter. It's a compound interest machine with 5 engines, and it's available to more working families than currently take advantage of it. That framework matters as much as any single number we talked about today.
All right. It's homework time.
No, I'm not doing it, Clint. I'm not doing it.
We got a 2-part homework today. Homework is, it depends on where you are. So first, if you already own your home, do the rent avoided calculation. Take a reasonable estimate of what rent would be on your house today. Multiply by 12 for the year. Multiply by however many years you've owned it. That's roughly how much of your money didn't go to a landlord. Look at that number. Feel it. That's engine 1 across your ownership period. Second, if you don't own yet, run the calculation on a hypothetical. Pick a $200,000 or $250,000 house that you might actually buy. Estimate what rent would be on it. Then imagine yourself 20 years from now, renter or owner, which version of you has more? The point isn't precision. It's to see whether renting is a decision you're making with your eyes open. In both cases, for the tax-specific version of this math, talk to a CPA. For a full personal finance strategy that includes real estate as one piece, talk to a financial planner. This isn't investment advice. It's a framework for seeing what's actually happening.
Okay, so that's episode 7 of Built to Own. 5 engines of property wealth: cash flow, loan pay down, appreciation, tax benefits, and leverage. Next week, we take the natural next step. How do homeowners transition into owning more than one property? Episode 8, Building the Portfolio. If you've already run through today's framework and are wondering what comes next, that's the one.
Share this episode with an owner in your life who's never seen the compound math on their own house. That rent avoided number lands differently when you see it written down. The framework has been sitting in front of them for years. It just hasn't been named. And I just want to remind everybody to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, so next week's episode will land automatically.
And every episode is at rerealestatepodcast.com. Whether you want the audio version or the video version, you can see them all right there. Share it with your mama and them. Subscribe, comment, like. It helps everything grow for us.
All right, Ben, that's another one in the can.
Have a good one.
All right, you too, Ben.
While we may discuss topics such as lending, interest rates, title law, real estate law, and appraisals in addition to real estate sales and transactions, please remember that we are only trained and licensed as real estate salespeople in Louisiana. The information shared on this podcast is for general purposes only and should not be taken as legal or financial advice. We may be agents, but unless we have signed paperwork stating otherwise, we are not your agents.